The berry is native to North America. It grows in places our ancestors walked every day, and lab tests say it is packed with the same deep purple pigments that made blueberries famous. But here is the strange part. In parts of Europe, farmers plant this berry on purpose by the acre and turn it into juice, concentrates, and supplements. In the United States, most people have never tasted it. Many have never even heard its name. So what happened? Why did America ignore its own super berry while other countries built an industry around it? Stay with me, because the answer is not a simple villain. It is a chain made of taste, language, processing, and money. And once you see that chain, you will never look at the fruit aisle the same way again. The berry is called Aronia. Many people also call it black chokeberry, and that second name is the first clue, because no one wants to buy a fruit that sounds like it might choke you. Aronia is not a trendy tropical import. It is a hardy shrub that belongs in the story of North American plants. You can find it in the eastern half of the country, in wet edges, thickets, and forest margins. It is tough. It handles cold winters, it can live in poor soils, and in late summer it loads its branches with small, glossy, almost black berries. If you look at the berry up close, you see why people get excited. The color is not just pretty. That dark purple comes from compounds called anthocyanins, the same family of pigments found in blueberries, blackberries, and purple grapes. And for a health-minded audience, especially people over 50, that sounds like a dream. Antioxidants, heart and blood vessel support, inflammation, aging, all the familiar themes. So why is Aronia not sitting next to blueberries in every grocery store? Here is the core tension of this story. Blueberries became a national habit. Aronia became a niche ingredient. And the reason has less to do with science and more to do with whether a berry can survive the real world. Because for any crop to become normal, it has to pass 4 gates. It has to taste good enough to eat by the handful. It has to ship and store without turning into mush. It has to be harvested and processed at scale. It has to be marketed in a way people understand. Aronia struggles at the first gate, and that forces everything else. But before we get to that, we need to rewind. Because Aronia has been here all along. Long before supermarket branding, North Americans knew their landscape through plants. Many native berries were food, medicine, and seasonal markers. Aronia was part of that web. It was never as famous as wild strawberries or as sweet as service berries, but it was present, and it was useful. Then came the era of modern agriculture, when the United States narrowed down its fruit world to a few winners: apples, oranges, grapes, strawberries, and later, blueberries. Those winners had one thing in common. They were easy to love. Aronia was not. Take a fresh Aronia berry and bite down. At first, you may get a mild sweetness, but then something happens. Your mouth tightens. Your tongue feels dry. It is not sour exactly. It is astringent, like strong tea, like an unripe persimmon, like red wine tannins without the pleasure. That sensation is the choke in chokeberry. Now here is the twist. That harshness is not a defect. It is the same chemistry people are chasing when they praise Aronia as powerful. The berry is rich in polyphenols, and some of those compounds create that drying, puckering feeling. So Aronia has a built-in contradiction. The very thing that makes it interesting is the thing that makes it hard to sell as a snack. That one problem pushed Aronia down a completely different path than blueberries. But there is another twist, and this is where the story turns global. Aronia may be native to North America, but it became a serious cultivated crop elsewhere. In the early 1900s, plant scientists and breeders in Europe and Russia explored hardy fruit shrubs. They wanted crops that could survive cold climates and still produce something useful. Aronia fit the bill. Over time, it moved into orchards and farm systems, not as a fresh eating fruit, but as a processing berry. Juice, jam, tea, colorants, wines, concentrates. In other words, Europe did not fall in love with Aronia the way Americans fell in love with blueberries. Europe made Aronia work by changing the product. And once you do that, the business math changes. Because if your berry is not meant to be eaten fresh, you can harvest it differently. You can freeze it, you can crush it, you can blend it with sweeter fruits, you can turn it into something shelf-stable. You are not selling a berry, you are selling an ingredient. Now you might be thinking, fine, so why didn't America do the same? That is the real question, and the answer lives inside the American food machine. Because America does not reward crops for being nutritious. America rewards crops for being easy. Easy to harvest, easy to ship, easy to standardize, easy to brand. Blueberries checked every box, especially once breeders developed varieties that were sweeter, bigger, and more uniform. Blueberries also had a friendly story. They were simple, they were pleasant, they were a perfect breakfast fruit. Aronia had the opposite story. It had a difficult taste, it had a confusing name, and it had no big national push behind it. But here is where it gets even more interesting. Aronia did not disappear in America. It got reclassified. In many places, it became an ornamental shrub. Landscapers liked it because it has pretty white flowers in spring and strong fall color. Birds like the berries, homeowners like low maintenance. So the same plant could sit in a yard for years, producing berries that fall and rot, while the owner buys blueberries at the store. That is not a conspiracy. That is a marketing failure. And it gets worse because of something very human. We eat with emotion. The word blueberry sounds friendly. Chokeberry sounds like danger. Names matter more than most people want to admit. Now let's talk about the second gate, supply chain. Even if a small group loves Aronia, that does not create a national market. To become mainstream, you need large, consistent production. You need processors. You need buyers. You need a predictable price that farmers can trust. And Aronia was stuck in a chicken and egg problem. Farmers do not plant acres of a crop without a buyer. Buyers do not build processing lines without a steady supply. So Aronia remained small. It shows up in pockets. You find a few farms, a few specialty products, a few berry powders in health stores, but it never becomes a default fruit. Now, here is the moment I want you to remember. Aronia did not fail because it lacks value. Aronia failed because it demands translation. It needs to be turned into something people want, and translation costs money. If you are a company, you have two choices. You can spend years educating the public about a bitter berry, building recipes and habits from scratch. Or you can sell blueberries and ride a wave that already exists. Most companies pick the wave, so Aronia stayed in the shadows. But wait, there is an even deeper contradiction, because the health story of Aronia can also become a trap. In the supplement world, you cannot just promise anything you want. If you push too hard with medical claims, regulators notice. You have to use careful language. You have to avoid treating the berry like a drug. That makes marketing harder. It is not impossible, but it is slower. And slower means fewer investors. Meanwhile, blueberries have an easier story. They are just food. They are easy to enjoy. They are already a habit. You do not need a lecture to sell them. Aronia needs a lecture. And most people do not want a lecture when they are hungry. So Aronia becomes something you take, not something you eat. A shot, a capsule, a spoon of powder. Again, not evil, just the path of least resistance. Now let's pause and make the mystery sharper. If Europe can make Aronia into an industry, why cannot America do it at home, where the plant is native? Because Europe embraced Aronia as a processing crop first, a processing decision that changed everything. America kept expecting it to behave like a snack fruit, and that difference shapes everything. Think about grapes. If you only judged grapes by eating them off the vine, you would miss wine, raisins, juice, and vinegar. Aronia is like that. But unlike grapes, it never got the cultural upgrade in America. So the berry sits in this awkward place. Too harsh for most fresh eaters. Too unknown for big processors. Too small for big agriculture. And too useful to disappear. Now here is the part that can surprise you. That harsh taste is not just bitterness, it is a chemical defense. Those compounds help protect the fruit, and they also create that intense mouth-drying feeling. And ironically, those same compounds are a big reason why some researchers and producers consider Aronia valuable. So Aronia is a berry that is almost designed for medicine-style products, not candy-style fruit. That is why, in many markets, Aronia is mixed with apple juice, grape juice, or other sweeter bases. It becomes a health blend instead of a standalone fruit. And once you accept that, Aronia suddenly makes sense. But the question remains, if it makes so much sense, why do we still ignore it? Here is the hard truth. The modern American diet is built around convenience, not resilience. A truly resilient crop can survive cold, drought, poor soil, pests, and neglect. But a truly convenient crop can be picked fast, shipped far, stored long, and sold cheap. Those two goals are often enemies. Aronia leans toward resilience. Blueberries, through decades of breeding and industry building, lean toward convenience. So Aronia sits on the wrong side of the system. Not because it is bad, because it is different. Now let's move into what this means today. Is Aronia a miracle berry? No. It is a plant. It is food. It is a strong, flavored fruit with interesting chemistry. It may support health as part of a good diet, but it is not a magic shield. If you have medical concerns, you still need real medical care. But Aronia has something that matters in the next chapter of American gardening and farming. It is hardy. Hardy. It is a shrub. It can fit into small farms and even backyards. And if you are willing to process it, even simply, you can make it enjoyable. Cook it down with apples, make jam, dry it and blend it into oatmeal. Add it to smoothies with banana. Use it as a color and flavor booster, not as a candy berry. In other words, stop asking Aronia to be a blueberry. Ask it to be Aronia. And here is one more twist to close the loop. Aronia's story is not really about one berry. It is about how food becomes normal. We like to believe we eat the best foods, but often we eat the best marketed foods. We eat what fits machines. We eat what fits shipping containers. We eat what fits habits. Aronia did not fit, so it stayed quiet. But quiet does not mean worthless. It means undiscovered, in plain sight. So the next time you see a dark purple juice blend or a berry powder or a hardy shrub at a nursery, remember this story. A North American native berry became a European crop, and in its own homeland, it became a footnote, not because it lacked power, because it lacked a pathway. And that leaves one last question. If we are entering an age where resilience matters again, what other difficult foods have we ignored simply because they were not convenient? If you found this fascinating, hit subscribe for more stories like this.